There we go.
Sorry, everyone.
Starting from the top. Odor-free composting with biochar. Biochar is chicken soup for the soil. Environmental Services Association of Alberta presentation today. Myself, Don Harfield, and Rob Lavoie helping out with the questions at the end of the presentation. So, can everybody hear me now, Joe?
You sure can.
Great. Okay, organic waste is being recognized as a worldwide problem and needs to be kept out of landfills, but rather be converted to a valuable soil product. Not properly composted, organic matter in landfills decomposes anaerobically and produces landfill gas, which is predominantly methane. Methane is 22 times more damaging than carbon dioxide as a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere. Food waste occurs throughout the food system, from farm production, food processing, distribution, retail food stores, and in our homes. Global food loss and waste amount to between 1/3 and 1/2 of all food produced. In developed countries such as Canada, about 100 kilograms per person per year is wasted right in our homes and restaurants. Municipalities design their organic waste facilities for 175 kilograms per person. Food waste is a major part of the impact of agriculture on climate change and associated environmental issues. The UN Food and Agricultural Organization estimated in 2014 that food waste causes a global economic, environmental, and social cost of $2.6 trillion a year and is responsible for 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, soils around the world are being depleted of carbon. Our world population is almost 8 billion people, and our cities are built on the best agricultural land. And I just ask you this one question. Who hates smelly waste? Our presentation today is going to include the introduction, what is composting, waste options for home and garden, what is biochar, what does it do, composting trials, what science tells us, and commercial applications and municipal examples. So this will explain part of my journey about composting after retiring from Alberta Innovates and then joining Airterra in the vision of living soils for healthy plants, nutritious food, and pure water. The Alberta government put a cap on the size of municipal landfills and is becoming increasingly more regulated. Most communities are requesting their homeowners and businesses to separate their organic waste from their regular garbage. This is typically referred to as source-separated organics. There are problems with managing organic waste, but we can make it better. You can see the problems and see the opportunities that we can eliminate pests, we can suppress odors, and we can enhance the compost quality. Airterra is a Calgary, Alberta-based consultant and provider of carbon capture regenerative solutions with a vision of living soils for healthy plants, nutritious food, and pure water. And Airterra has expertise in carbon capture solutions and collaborates with universities, researchers, and industry to develop practical solutions. Composting is the ever-recurring, essential, natural, aerobic microbiological process that supports all life on Earth. The microscopic laborers are bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and rotifers. Compost is organic matter that has been decomposed in the presence of air through biological reduction and reduced to humus, which is the organic matter of soil. By contrast, anaerobic digestion is the decomposition of biodegradable material in the absence of air and liberates methane and has strong odors. liberated gases can be captured and burned like landfill gas. Compost has been practiced throughout history ever since it was found that applying animal manure to soil significantly aided in the growth of food crops. Composting is an essential aspect of organic farming and waste management. The slide on the left shows the wasted food, and the slide on the right shows examples of composting in covered windrows, which keep in the moisture and heat, but also allow for aeration through fan-driven air. Why does compost smell? Well, our friends on the left and the right can attest that sometimes they don't like it either. It's often too wet, anaerobic. It's too much green material. The pile isn't mixed properly. There's meat, fats, dairy, and manure in there, or it's too compacted, which doesn't allow enough oxygen in there. So a properly balanced compost pile should not smell. Compost should smell like dirt, and if it does not, there's something wrong and your compost pile is not properly heating up. And if you are composting manure in your compost pile, this will smell until the manure breaks down. You can also add biochar, or you can cover it with 6 to 12 inches of straw, leaves, or newspaper. And this will reduce the smell of your composting pile considerably. Compost chemistry. The ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio for composting is generally considered to be about 30 to 1, or 30 parts carbon for each part nitrogen by weight. At lower ratios, nitrogen will be supplied in excess and will be lost as ammonia gas, causing undesirable odors. Higher ratios of carbon to nitrogen mean that there is not sufficient nitrogen for optimum growth of the microbial populations, so the compost will remain relatively cool and degradation will proceed at a slower rate. As the composting proceeds, the carbon to nitrogen ratio gradually decreases from 30 to 1 to a range of 10 to 15 to 1 for the finished product. This occurs because each time that organic compounds are consumed by microorganisms, 2/3 of the carbon is given off as carbon dioxide. The remaining third is incorporated along with the nitrogen in microbial cells that are then later released for use once the cells die. Oxygen, the microbes need 10% oxygen and they will die at anything less than 5%. The pH is optimum between 5.5 and 8.5, and as bacteria and fungi digest organic matter, they release organic acids. The organic acids become further broken down during the composting process. If the system becomes anaerobic, the acid accumulation can lower the pH to 4.5, severely limiting the microbial activity. Several methods of processing organic waste include composting, and you can do this outdoors or indoors. Outdoors, it's ambient temperature, and indoors, you can have it at temperature-controlled conditions. Anaerobic digestion, they can be done as a wet slurry or as a dry, relatively dry, 40% moisture. There's an integrated example, such as dry anaerobic digestion with composting, and the specialty types, such as the advanced research method by Johnson Su, which has more air and longer composting time. And then, of course, there's thermal processing, gasification, incineration, plasma gasification, which predominantly have carbon ash outputs. And the feedstocks drive everything in the selection of which method is best. There's some common composting steps. As you can see on the left, there's the residential, and on the right, there's the commercial. The main difference is, of course, the mesophilic design of the residential system, because it has lower temperatures and therefore more limitations. The thermophilic design for commercial application has broader limits. and they are essentially the same in many aspects, as you can see the ones that are identified in the green. Composting residential waste is typically limited to vegetable waste and should not include meat or dairy products because of the low temperatures. And commercial composting can accept meat and dairy products because the higher temperature thermophilic bacteria and microbes can convert the organic pathogens to healthy compost. But things can go wrong. Pathogens. They originate from fecal matter, toxic waste. It can attract seagulls and burrowing animals. Sometimes the compost has too low of a carbon content. It can have smelly odors, and the smelly odors are usually as a result of insufficient browns or too many greens. Then you've got leachate, and that is an indication of an anaerobic condition or too much water, such as rain, snow, or not recirculating the leachate. It can also take too long, and that could be as a result of having too much brown material, insufficient moisture, or it's just too cold. And neighbors can complain of the odors. Oops. So, what to avoid? Plant materials that have been chemically sprayed, treated or chlorinated water, animal waste, meats and cheese, and this is no Christmas present for your compost bin. If possible, avoid animal waste, meats and cheese, which can attract flies and other insects, can contain or produce pathogens and delay the composting process unless temperatures can be sustained over 55 degrees Celsius for 3 days to kill these organic pathogens. So, why compost with biochar? Well, it minimizes odors. The carbon dioxide emissions are a natural part of composting, but H2S and NOx can be greatly reduced or eliminated. That's the smelly bit. It can make your compost better. It adds carbon and improves soil biota for plant nutrition. It increases total organic carbon content. It adds recalcitrant carbon. That is what biochar is recalcitrant carbon, which does not decompose like labile carbon, which is common in soils. And biochar lasts a lifetime. So for residential composting options, there's quite a few. And you can check on the internet and find various types: open air composting, direct composting, tumbler, vertical aerated bins. You can have a worm farm, you can use bacteria composting, you can have combination styles, or you can take it to the curb and you can let the municipality, your city or town take care of it for you. But add biochar, you can do that to any of these options. So what is biochar? As you may already know, biochar has huge internal porosity and surface area. It is carbonized wood, and it remains in soils for hundreds to thousands of years. It creates excellent soil conditions that stimulate beneficial soil microbes for plant health. And each ton of biochar amended into soils stores the equivalent of about 2.3 tons of CO2 drawn out of the atmosphere. Theoretically, this is 3.67, but allowance for processes and transportation brings this down to the range of about 2.3 tons of CO2. Odour is helping gardeners and farmers in Alberta to enhance their soils. A 7-liter box is shown on the left-hand side, or a 70-liter bag is often requested by homeowners, whereas farmers need larger quantities, such as these super sacks. Terra's biochar is a premium grade exceeding 80% organic carbon, which meets the IBI Class 1 top tier classification and is screened into 3 grades: fines, mediums, and coarse. And other grades of OMRI certified biochar are coming soon. Biochar soil benefits are: it improves soil moisture, it increases nutrient retention, it increases soil carbon content, it improves crop yields when administered with other supplements, it improves soil pliability, and improves pH as it can be adjusted, and it stimulates beneficial microbial activity. So I did some composting trials back in 2017 to 2019, and these are photographs of my dual rotating composter on the left slide, and you can see the plastic bin that I have my dead leaves in it. And on the right-hand side, you can see the Odour biochar that I used for the trials. When I did the blending greens of the materials to be added to the composter, you can see that on the left-hand side. And you can see at the middle of the end of the season, when I remove the finished composter, what that looks like. And it's an 11 cubic foot dual composter. Each side is 5.5 cubic feet. So took the kitchen scraps from the kitchen, and I sprinkled biochar on it, and kept the odors down if I left it too long in the kitchen. So adding the biochar in the kitchen was a good thing. And then I put that into the composter. And that's a picture of our small garden with the stationary composter in the back. So I did some residential composting trials in 2017, and the first batch used dead leaves as the primary carbon source. The second batch in 2017 used shaved wood as the carbon source because I ran out of dry leaves. Both batches were composted in a commercially available black plastic rotating composter using home and garden waste. And the biochar was added to one side of the composter and not to the other side so that I could compare the results. In 2018 and 19, the trial was similar to 2017, and I used dry leaves. In 2019, the composting was less rigorous, and it was performed in the stationary top-fed composter. And I added biochar in the kitchen container and each composter load, and dry leaves and or grass clippings were added in layers. What I found out is that biochar addition eliminated time to condition the biochar, because it normally takes 1 to 2 weeks to do that. And the biochar addition minimized the odors during the composting process, starting in the kitchen and into the garden composters. Biochar without conditioning has strong ionic attraction to soil nutrients and can damage plant roots when directly applied to the plant pots because it does not have nutrients by itself. But biochar conditioning is necessary to enhance its soil effectiveness, and biochar increases the soil carbon content, retains moisture and nutrients better, and provides better soil quality. So biochar adsorbs nutrients onto the large charged internal surface area, and it absorbs moisture into the large porous spaces. So why does biochar reduce odors? Well, it absorbs ammonia and H2S emissions, and it adsorbs these gases into the microscopic pores. So adsorbed emissions means less odors, and it makes a nutrient-enhanced compost, which, if you're a commercial operator, makes you money. Biochar sequesters carbon through converting wood into biochar when it is converted into soil or otherwise locked in to such things such as building materials, or it is geologically injected. And multiple studies have evaluated biochar's effect on nitrogen oxide emissions, showing biochar reduced the emissions in the soil by 28% in the field trials. In lab trials, this was as high as 54%. There are three basic phases of thermophilic composting. The first one is the initial phase of mesophilic microorganisms in the temperature range of 35 to 40 degrees. The second one is the thermophilic bacteria, which thrive in a higher temperature in the range of 55 degrees Celsius, and there are at that point sufficient high energy compounds available. The final maturation phase by the mesophiles occurs as the temperature cools down. Typical composting time is about a month and then followed by curing. For example, the city of Calgary has a temperature-controlled in-vessel system which composts for approximately 21 days before going into a curing phase for another 40 days. This will actually take longer when you're composting outdoors, when you don't have it in a temperature-controlled environment. And our Alberta environment typically requires a minimum of 3 days at thermophilic temperatures, which are sustained above 55 degrees Celsius to kill the organic pathogens. So what makes good compost? Well, it's achieved by having sufficient aeration throughout rotation or returning of the blended material. Small twigs can be added to provide structure when the materials settle and promote aerobic decomposition. Adequate moisture to promote the decomposition is helpful, but not so wet to avoid anaerobic conditions. Good compost should have high organic matter, should have a neutral range of pH, better between 6.5 to 7.5, and a minimal detectable level of pathogens and toxins. And the inputs will determine and greatly affect the quality of the resultant compost. So there's some practical recommendations. Composting methods should use fallen leaves as the primary carbon source instead of shaved wood, because shaved wood still has a lignin content which prohibits or reduces the time, increases the time to break down the lignin content. Should avoid any animal matter, including eggshells, at home, unless they've been oven baked, to avoid the unintended pathogen bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli. Soil tests are helpful to determine the nutrient content of a compost, but a specialty compost lab can provide a much better evaluation. Understanding the lab testing methodologies helps, but it's important to know that manure, compost, and soil tests are different and they provide different results. Compost testing is preferred to understand the results of your compost. So what does science tell us about biochar? Well, it improves the compost physico-chemical properties. It enhances the microbial activities and promotes organic matter decomposition. It reduces ammonia and greenhouse gas emissions. It upgrades the quality of the compost by increasing the total and plant available nutrient content and enhances the compost maturity. As you can see on the bottom, organic coating on biochar explains its nutrient retention and stimulation of soil fertility by a study in October 2017. Municipal and agricultural composting. Odour is encouraging the use of biochar as a co-composting ingredient for municipal source separated organics and animal bedding. Odour recently coached university students in the design of an in-vessel composting system similar to the city of Calgary, which is the largest in Canada. Terra continues to assist farmers with guidance for the inclusion of biochar in their composting of animal manures. So for soils regeneration and land reclamation, there's a lot of applications for biochar, as you can see on the left: retail gardening, horticultural, urban market garden, urban tree care, organic fertilizers, agricultural land regeneration, and for industrial site reclamation, such as on the right-hand side. You can see those circled sites where biochar was amended in the spring of 2019, and this is courtesy of Saskatchewan Polytech. There's commercial applications for these findings, and that commercial composting operators must comply with Alberta composting regulations. The optimum composting conditions require a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 25 to 30. Feedstock and the carbon content varies over the 4 seasons, with dead leaves available predominantly in the spring and fall. Animal matter, including eggshells, are typically included, which requires hot composting, greater than 55 degrees Celsius, to kill the pathogen bacteria. Monitoring of temperature and moisture levels are essential to ensure compliance with Alberta composting regulations, and optimum conditions are sustained to reduce the composting time. And lab testing of carbon content, organic matter, and pathogens is recommended to ensure compost quality is maintained. And here is a summary of the Alberta composting regulations. One thing to note is that the Alberta Environment and Parks intends to replace the code of practice with a new one in the very near future, and the department plans to include biochar to the list of acceptable feedstock and amendments. And recent correspondence from them stated that biochar will serve as a beneficial amendment for odor reduction, leachate control, pH control, moisture control, and bulking agent for compost facilities. Benefits for commercial applications are: 1, it reduces odors, and you can achieve that by adding it to problematic green materials upon receipt. You can apply it to leachate surfaces and use it for temporary problem areas. It also makes better compost, so that you can sell enhanced grade compost grade. You can have a premium compost which has 5% biochar. You can have an ultra grade compost with 10% biochar, and you can have specialty blends which are greater than 10% biochar, and you can perform custom client compost blending. The several composting methods being in use by municipalities. First one is windrows. Second is aerated static piles, in vessel, which is an enclosed environment, and integrated anaerobic digestion with composting. This is the open air process for windrows. They're turned regularly, and they're typically used for yard and garden waste, and not typically for animal manure. You can have an aerated static pile, that's outdoors, mixed in a large pile from 5 to 15 meters high, and bulking agents are used to aerate, and direct aeration via air blowers and piping network, assisted by controls from temperature sensors and moisture tests. Here's a picture of the Calgary composting facility from the air, and also inside one of the composting vessels. It can accommodate a wide variety of organic waste, and it enables efficient control of environmental conditions, is aerated, has air recirculation and recirculated with leachate, and adds water as the pile dries out. Here's an example of an integrated anaerobic digestion facility in the Netherlands, and they have a continuous plug flow anaerobic digester, and this one here processes a quarter of the incoming feedstock on a half-acre footprint of the facility. There's examples in the United States where municipal composting is occurring in Minneapolis, Cleveland, Boulder, and in California. In Minneapolis, they're doing composting for their urban trees. In Cleveland, they're doing similar applications. In Boulder, they're developing their plans. And in California, they're doing custom blending for farmers. In Canada, there's municipal initiatives through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, through the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and 2 cities, Vancouver and Toronto, are part of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, which emphasizes global carbon neutrality. The Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance is a collaboration of leading global cities working to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. And just yesterday, the federal budget includes $104.4 billion in new spending over 3 years to fuel the recovery and kickstart the transition to a green economy. Nature wants us to cooperate through photosynthesis. Each year during the Northern Hemisphere summer cycle, photosynthesis by plants reduces the global CO2 concentrations by about 7%, which is the dip. However, during the winter, when plants do not grow as quickly in the Northern Hemisphere, the CO2 concentration increases by 10% to result in an annual net increase of 3 parts per million in the sawtooth movement upward. Converting biomass into stable carbon products for municipal and agricultural compost helps stabilize our global CO2 concentrations, or it can do. So carbon sequestration, there are carbon credit systems available, Vera, Pure Earth, and European. Canada currently has a carbon tax system, and the carbon value is expected to rise to $170 a ton CO2 equivalent by 2030. And biochar sequestered, I think I mentioned before, theoretical 3.67 tons of CO2 biochar has a theoretical sequestering capability of 3.67 times the CO2 equivalent, which based on $170 a ton would be approximately $400 a ton of biochar. Specific life cycle analyses are required. So let's do it. Co-composting with biochar reduces odors, it enhances compost value, it sequesters carbon in the soil. So why not Canada? Why not Alberta? And why not now? Here's some examples of how. You can apply biochar in commercial composting trials, use that material and use them in dry, weather resistant areas or concerns for trees and parks. So let's make some compost with biochar and let's put it in our trees and parks to help the sustainability in dry weather conditions and help the environment. And Airterra would be pleased to work with operators to perform these composting trials, and we look forward to those opportunities. So thank you very much. This is how you can contact us, and we look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Don. That was a lot of great information. There's a lot covered in there. Appreciate that. Some extremely valuable information. I have one question already. So if anyone has questions, please type them in the question box on your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. Don, you said feedstocks are very important. What are the best feedstocks to get good biochar?
That would be forest residuals, which is what we would like to use, and that is what we have in our premium biochar now, is forestry residuals, not trees that are cut down specifically for making biochar, but the residuals after making lumber or other forest products.
Okay, are feedstocks always labeled on the package?
And that's a question for Rob.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm just unmuting.
Sorry. Yeah.
The feedstock, no, it's not labeled on the package, but we are required by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to follow our registration of our product, which specifies that the product is made from residual woody feedstocks from the forest industry.
Okay.
Sorry, and we can provide any user or customer our feedstock listing as a guarantee from how we manufacture it.
Okay, that's good to know. Can either of you speak to the opportunity to co-locating biochar and compost production technologies at one site?
Yes, this is already happening in Edmonton, or in a trial basis, and that is with our collaborating partner, Innovative Reduction Strategies Incorporated, who have a site on 75th Street in Edmonton with all west demolition. And so they're doing some trials with composting of the organic matter with the produced biochar they have at their facility.
Okay. What are the price points for like the consumer sized box of biochar versus the super sack? Someone's asking.
Well, they're on our website, so we would encourage people to go there. And I can point out that there's various biochar grades. So when you're looking at prices for biochar, you need to take a look at the IBI classes 1, 2, and 3, and be sure that you're getting the quality biochar that you're looking for. Air Terrace biochar is premium grade, upper tier IBI class 1, and from our website you can get a small 7-liter box for $13.80. You can get a 1.2 cubic meter for $499, but we give discounts for quantity of 10 and 20%, and large orders greater than that.
For the small homeowner box, how long does that last? Like what, for the uneducated like me, never composted, what, biochar box, what is it?
It's kind of like your salt. It's kind of like your salt shaker. How big is your salt shaker, and how much do you use? And so, Rob, maybe you can speak to.
Yeah, no, each box is enough to amend about 35 square feet of a garden bed. So okay. 3 feet long, 10 feet long, 3 feet wide by 10 feet or so, 12 feet. And once you've blended your biochar into a compost as a top dress for your garden, you will, on that specific section of garden, you won't need to really do that again for a lifetime.
Oh, okay. Cool. Do commercial composting facilities, sorry, questions are popping up, dechlorinate the water before applying?
That would be up to the individual location, and many places will have a collection point where they will just have it go to a low point in the site, and then they will just pump that and spray it.
But they shouldn't chlorinate any of the water going onto that compost.
Most sites will have chlorinated water there for the purposes of their office and their washroom facilities, but they would not typically use that for their composting piles.
So thanks for sharing the info. Are the percentages given for composting weight percent or volume percent?
Those are volume percent.
Okay, if weight, okay, it says if weight is dry biochar assumed as opposed to damp biochar.
Yeah, no, those are volume. That's why that confusion is avoided by going with volume percent.
Okay. Are there any visual or odor characteristics you should look for to determine a good quality biochar?
Don.
Okay, the Biochar doesn't have any smell.
Okay,
If it does have a smell, it's not good quality biochar. And not that I recommend it, but I will use the taste test and it will be completely neutral. And I wouldn't do that with soil, but I would do that on known quality biochar. And I do that as a means of doing my own personal taste test.
what rates of biochar are applied for odor reduction in commercial composting?
Well, as I pointed out in one of the slides there, is that up to 1% would be necessary for odor control. You can then put it in as at higher rates as that, and we're looking for demonstration sites to be able to determine the optimum blend for the operator. We're suggesting 1%, 5%, and 10%. In Minnesota, Minneapolis, they're going for 12 to 15%.
Okay. It says requires energy carbon emissions to make biochar. Is there a life cycle analysis to show net carbon sequestration?
This is site specific, and it depends on how close the materials are, where they're being destined for, where they're put into the ground. And places like California, they are reluctant to sell the biochar up into Canada because of their local carbon footprint. For their life cycle analysis and their carbon credits, they do not want to have the long distance transportation, and therefore they are reluctant to sell it to Canada.
Okay. Do you add any microbes to biochar prior to adding to compost pile?
No, but they can be added separately as part of the mixture that the client wishes to add. And there's a company near Edmonton that specializes in using compost and worms and wanting and add biochar to their blend.
Do you have an estimate on the increased price point for biochar compost blend versus a standard compost product?
I'd be pleased to work with a client to be able to help them come up with that number.
Okay. Does the product qualify for carbon offsets?
Yes, it depends on scale. And in Canada right now, we have a tax, carbon tax system, and investors are looking for carbon credits. And Canada hopefully will move in the direction of going to a carbon credit system rather than a carbon tax system.
So can I just speak into that as well,
Yep.
Joe? Yes, the answer is yes. The United Nations Framework for Climate Change Convention and the IPCC recognizes biochar as a carbon offset, as a climate mitigation technology, and also as a climate change adaptation technology, and so recognizes biochar for carbon offsets. And there are a number of organizations around the world, including the European Biochar certificate program that's available, and an organization called Puro out of the UK that's offering carbon credits for biochar amendments to soils. And in North America, one organization called Vera is in the process of developing a protocol for carbon offsets for biochar applications.
Interesting. How are biochar fines used safely?
The big issue with excuse me, with the biochar fines is its dustiness, and so a person wants to wear a P90 mask or something over their nose one of the reasons why we have our biochar screened is so that it eliminates the dust issues.
Okay, and let me speak into that as well. Airterra does not recommend the use of biochar fines as a soil amendment because it tends to plug up the pores and reduce water infiltration. So we recommend a medium 2 to 6 millimeter particle size distribution, which blends very well with soil and with compost. The larger pieces of biochar, the coarse material is used in a water filtration product. But fines can also be very nicely used as an animal feed ingredient. And this is happening under trial basis. And so you simply blend the fines in with something moist to keep the dust down and to prevent health issues with the animals. And they actually enjoy the fines quite a bit.
Interesting.
One thing that I would just add to that as well, Joe, is that with the fines, you will actually find that there are higher inorganic fines in there. And so the larger sizes, by going to the 2 to 6 millimeter, increases the carbon content to be in excess of 80%. And our pricing on carbon is based on our pricing on biochar is based on the content of the carbon in the product.
Interesting. Very interesting. If there's any more questions, please, we got a couple minutes, jot them in. That was a great amount of questions for one of our webinars. I really appreciate the involvement of everyone. Thank you. Just a reminder again that recording of this will be available at esa.org/webinars, hopefully later today once the video is processed. You can check it out there. Don, are you able to share a copy of your PowerPoint as a PDF with me so I can post it, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then people have your contact info. So I appreciate this, Don. Appreciate Rob, you jumping in as well. Appreciate that. I think this was very interesting. Something not normal that we would cover on our webinars. So I really appreciate lots of applications. And a reminder.
Great, Joe. Pleasure to be involved.
Thanks. Sorry for the little hiccup at the beginning. Just a reminder, we have a webinar next week again on Project Forest. There's a new initiative, so you can we'll check that out on our website as well. And then we'll have another one coming up in May on another mental health one for everyone on low motivation and low mood. Just something different. So reminder about that, to check those out and to check out our EnviroTech program. So once again, thanks Don and Rob. All the best to everyone, and please stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.